Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV. We are live on the Our Lads Football Network. We're talking San Francisco 49ers. And when we talk about the 49ers, we welcome in Kyle Madson from NinersWire.com. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going, man. It's going.
Yes.
Trying to avoid triple digits out in the part of California where I live for as long as possible. We haven't gotten there yet, so that's a plus.
Well, you're used to it, right? Isn't that the whole idea? Yeah. Is it a humid 105 or whatever?
No, luckily it's dry. It's a little more dry up where I am in the Far East Bay area and north of that.
Yeah, our partner here, Jim Feist, he lives in Vegas, so he's constantly talking about that. About the hundreds, but hey, there's no humidity, so
no.
Yeah, and that does count. I was in South Florida, working on the South Florida market for about 20 years, and it was the worst. I just could not take it.
A couple years ago, I went to the Florida Keys on vacation, and I just wasn't ready for it. You know, you see like, oh, it's in the mid 80s the whole time. That's not bad.
Yeah,
and it feels like 106.
Yeah.
Just
but you'd rather it be 106 and no humidity.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's brutal. All right. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that you have a show, Candlestick Chronicles, that is available during the season, usually about 3 times a week, off season 1 to 2. So we'll have links in the description for that. And I'm assuming at this point in the season, now that the draft is over and the majority of free agency is over, that it's all about what's going on at minicamp, rookie camp, and all that pretty much is done too, right? So it's everybody's last break before training camp, correct?
Yeah, and we've been taking that break the last couple of weeks, and now we'll get into some of the roster preview stuff and trying to piece together what the 49ers are going to look like, because I think they're going to look pretty dramatically different than they did last season.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I noticed too. And I was going over the prep for the show. Just wow, a ton of different new faces, and that's kind of strange to see from an organization, a winning organization for the most part. They did have a blip last year. We get all that, but yeah, there's a lot of different new faces popping in here, and so. This front office has done a tremendous job with all the turnover, the coaching turnover, and some personnel turnover that you would think this heavy or heavier than normal personnel turnover would be in the right hands. And how do you feel at this point in time? I know it's early. We haven't even gotten into the preseason yet, let alone the season. But how do you think John Lynch and the rest of them have done with this very busy offseason so far?
Yeah, John Lynch was on a podcast, 49ers Talk podcast is what it's called, and he was talking to Matt Mayoko, the host of that show, and talked about how they executed the plan they wanted to execute. And I think that's an important part of the 49ers offseason here. None of this was a surprise. They didn't go, oh, hey, we want to get Dre Greenlaw back. Oh, my God, we can't. Oh, Travarius Ward's going to come out. Oh, my God, we can't get him back.
Yeah.
They wanted this to go this way. They purposely cut Malik Collins. They purposely cut Javon Hargrave. What they did was they took these players who were on inflated contracts, who were not productive or were dealing with injury stuff. In Dre Greenlaw's case, where you have some questions about what level of player he's going to be after returning from that Achilles injury. So this was not all a surprise to San Francisco. They wanted to cut ties with some more expensive players, or let some players who may not be worth the money may not be worth to the 49ers the money they were going to get in free agency, and kind of try and reset a cap situation that had started to get out of control. And they can do that this year because Brock Purdy's still making, I think, like $7 million against the cap, $5 or $7 million against the cap. His cap is not big.
Yeah.
So they're eating a bunch of dead money this year. They have an NFL high, like 92 million. I think they're at 92 million in dead money now, which is just an insane number.
Wow.
But it's with the hope that this gives them the flexibility to open a new Super Bowl window over the next couple of years. Now, whether they do that or not, TBD. Like you said, it is June 17. We're still more than a month away from training camp starting. But if this is what they wanted to do, extend Fred Warner, extend George Kittle, get the Brock Purdy contract done. They got all of those done before training camp, which is, I think, a good sign that the front office is learning some lessons from messy negotiations with Brandon Ayuk and Nick Bosa. They got that done. They had an 11-player draft class. And they were going to have to hit on some draft picks eventually.
Yeah.
Which is a thing I keep harping on as well. Forget how this entire offseason went. They just need better players. They need better young players. So I think their future is going to come down to whether the 2024 and 2025 draft classes become productive or not. It has nothing to do with all the players they lost this offseason. They went 6-11 last year.
Yeah.
It's not like they're coming off a Super Bowl and lost this glut of talent. So it's going to come down to the next couple of drafts and if Brock Purdy can live up to that contract.
Okay, the last time we spoke before the draft, and we were also getting into free agency, I went through and asked you about specific needs that you thought would be the top of the list. So let's pop up, first of all, the Arlad's depth chart. And as we go through this, I'll ask you whether or not they've been able to take care of these needs. So starting along the offense and defensive lines. So this was the primary focus you said going into the offseason, were both lines of scrimmage. And as we can see here, we've got, of course, the 2 rookie draft picks, the 3 actually here along the defensive front, no free agents. Again, we're just talking, actually, Bryce Huff, big free agent addition at edge. So he was the one really there that sticks out the most. So 4 players on defense significantly added. On offense, not much. Andre Dillard, looks like that's about it in the 7th round draft pick. So let's talk about that. What do you think about how they did along both lines of scrimmage? Because it definitely looks like they took care of the defensive line a lot more than the offensive line.
So, yeah, the defensive line, they did what they had to do. 3 of their first 4 draft picks, 3 of their first 5 draft picks, was it? Were used on the defensive line. They took CJ West in the 4th round.
Yes.
A player I really like out of Indiana.
5.
It wouldn't shock me if he winds up starting. I think the depth chart you guys have at our lads is correct right now, but it wouldn't shock me at all if we see CJ West move into a starting role.
3 rookie starters.
Yeah, maybe starting over Alfred Collins. If Alfred Collins is a little more of just like a run stuffer, but again, I'm not.
Sure.
I'm guessing. We haven't even seen these guys put
I
pads
don't know.
on the pros
It's
yet.
quite possible. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think they did what they had to do there. And then the Bryce Huff trade was the kind of move that I think a good team makes, where you're giving up a conditional 5th round pick next year for a player who has had success under Robert Saleh, who didn't have success in a very different role with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm intrigued to see how that works out. If he can give them 6 or 7 sacks as a rotational edge rusher, they would take it, because they really struggled to get to the quarterback last year. So I think what they did on the defensive line is fine. Whether Michael Williams or Alfred Collins or CJ West or Bryce Huff are any good, don't know. But they needed to overhaul that line with an influx of young, inexpensive talent, and they did that.
Okay. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The offensive line is where I have questions.
Okay.
Because in the lead up to the draft, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch made it really clear. So I thought on their offensive line, I thought you could upgrade over Colton McKivitz, their starting right tackle. He's not terrible. He's just pretty average. So I thought you could upgrade there, particularly since Trent Williams is going to be 37. If you could find a right tackle as an upgrade in the immediate, and then they could flip to be the long-term replacement for Trent Williams, I thought this was a good year to do that. They opted not to do that. Okay. Dominic Pooney at right guard going into his 2nd year. Fine. Good player. Had an awesome rookie year. But Jake Brendel, Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch both gave these like full-throated defenses of starting center Jake Brendel, who I think is okay. I don't think he's the worst center in the league, but I certainly thought they would look to upgrade, and they didn't try. They didn't, like you said, Connor Colby, their 7th round guard from Iowa, is going to play guard. I don't think he's going to play center. Andre Dillard, a free agent signing, like he might be the swing tackle, maybe. He's not going to start on the right side, and he's certainly not a long-term replacement for Trent Williams. So they're very clearly, and then Ben Barch, who's likely going to start at left guard. He was the backup left guard last season, acquitted himself pretty well when he had to start, but he got hurt in his second start, maybe his third, but he was good. And I don't hate having a starting left guard who's going to make like $2 million this year.
Sure.
But man, they just must really like Spencer Burford, who could conceivably be the swing tackle. He could wind up starting at left guard. Maybe they really like Matt Hennessy, a player that they added on a 2-year deal late last year. Nick Zakel, a former 6th round pick. They've tried, he was a tackle at Fordham, I think is where he went. But they've tried converting him to guard or center. So yeah, Fordham, go Rams. So I'm skeptical about their offensive line depth, and it's just not a position that they've typically prioritized during the Kyle Shanahan era. And in an offseason where I thought they could have used an influx of talent there, they really largely ignored it, which I think is really fascinating and could be a significant issue for them this year.
Yeah, it's like it's like I think the contrast from what a scheme, what a coaching staff can do for a particular specific position is versus talent is no more. I don't see this anywhere else. This contrast anywhere else. This divided in my mind, or this significantly divided than on San Francisco's offensive line. Because if you just look at them on paper, talent-wise, there's not a lot of talent there.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they're able to succeed more often than not because of the system, because of the scheme, because of how they coach this line and this offense. And you just wonder, is that something that can last? Is it? Can you keep doing that?
Sure,
it's been working.
Yeah, to an extent. But you also go back to the 2022 NFC title game where, and granted, that was a tight end blocking. I think it was Hassan Reddick who hit Brock Purdy and tore his UCL in his throwing elbow. You go back to the 2021 NFC title game where Aaron Donald just took over late in that game and the 49ers really didn't have an answer. You go back to both Chiefs Super Bowls. The key plays in that game were breakdowns on the offensive line or Chris Jones just dominating, where the 49ers just didn't really have an answer. And then you go watch Philly win a Super Bowl with a dominant offensive line. Yeah. And Philly's going to be really good again because they have an awesome offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys, I don't think are a particularly well-run organization, but they've had really, really good offensive lines, and they've won a lot of games because of that. You go to the Lions, awesome offensive line, and you can track the quality of their offensive line is like directly proportional to how good they've been, right? So
absolutely.
I think it's easy to look at this the way you do. And I think you look at it the way the 49ers do and go, we just need starters. Yeah. Like if we have good enough playmakers, the offensive line just needs to be just okay and we'll be fine. And I think that's true for the most part, but at some point when you have an opportunity to add quality talent there, I think you should. And I don't know that the 49ers are super interested in doing that.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like you think they've, I don't know, maybe there's ego there, or it's just, we can get by, and we're winning games. And even though those games you mentioned, a lot of big games, especially the Kansas City games and so forth, well, they can almost make these excuses themselves in their heads of that wasn't necessarily the problem, because obviously if they felt that way, if they felt like a lot of other fans felt, because I'm sure there's a lot of 49er fans that are wondering what in the world are they doing? Why aren't they adding more talent there? But they don't. And I guess this is just the way that they believe that they can win. Maybe it'll take a second bad a season. Who knows? I don't know what the case is, but that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on for sure. Because I don't know. I think because Trent Williams is there, you do wonder whether or not he's also such a major piece and a factor of why this offensive line is able to get by. Because I remember, what was it, a couple of years ago when he went out for a few games? I remember they lost every game he wasn't in, and that is not a coincidence.
No. Not at all. And they've not, you don't, the thing is you don't just find a replacement for Trent Williams, right? Like
No.
he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. You're not just going to go, oh, okay, yeah, this guy is just going to plug it. But you could insulate yourself a little bit more from a 37-year-old who hasn't played a full season with you since he came over in 2020. Like at some point you'd think you'd want a more quality backup there, but I guess not.
No, that's they're going to keep going with it. I guess again, they think it works, and it has for the most part. So we'll see. All right, weak side linebacker. Let's go ahead and move on down here. So weak side linebacker, or just linebacker in general, looking at the whole unit, that was the one position that they did add. They added Nick Martin in round 3. I know that they really, from what I've heard, they really like D. Winters. So what do you think we're going to see as far as the linebacking? Well, there's only 2 linebackers usually on the field. So that's the big position there. What do you think about the linebacker unit outside of Fred Warner?
Can I just put a pin in that real quick and just say this depth chart is the right way to do a depth chart. Okay. It is the base 4-2 with the nickel corner. That's the right way to do it, because you can do the whole Sam linebacker thing. Hang on. My headphones are going out on me. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Just so everybody knows too, if you haven't already seen an Arled's depth chart right up here, there's the color coordinated deal here. So aqua UDFAs, red are injured, purple rookie draft picks, and gold are the free agents. Okay. Let's see. Okay. You ready, Kyle?
Just again, my setup is failing me here, but I think I'm good to go for.
Okay.
So yeah, love this. Nickel defense is the right thing. That's what they're primarily. I think this is the right move right now. D. Winters ahead of Nick Martin, just based solely on experience. I'm not sold on D. Winters yet.
Okay.
I love the idea of him as a player, but he's still getting his bearings going into year 3. Ideally, you'd see that player kind of take over, particularly because Devondre Campbell was not good at that will linebacker spot last year, and D. Winters never overtook him. Now, whether that was because of defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen or because the 49ers just really didn't think D. Winters was ready, I'm not totally sure, but that gives me some pause with D. Winters for sure. But I think he and Nick Martin are really similar players, and I think that's going to be a real battle in training camp for that starting will linebacker spot, which is on the field for all 3 downs. So that's the important one, unlike the Sam linebacker spot, which is in the base defense, which matters a little bit less. But I'm interested to see with Winters and Martin, to a lesser extent, Jalen Graham, and to a lesser extent, Tatum Bethune, a 7th-round pick from last year, if Robert Saleh's return to the 49ers coaching staff helps that linebacking core at all. I think D'Amico Ryans played a big role in their linebacker development over the years, but they oversaw Fred Warner and his development into the best off-ball linebacker in the sport. They oversaw Dre Greenlaw's development, who before his injury was one of the 5 best off-ball linebackers in the sport. They oversaw the development of Azeez Al-Shire, who has parlayed his time in San Francisco into a couple of really nice free agent deals. So I'm really intrigued to see if Robert Saleh, who has a background as a linebackers coach, if his return helps get the most out of Winters and Martin. And the 49ers are hoping so, because their inability to control the middle of the field last year against passing attacks or in the run killed them. Because losing Dre Greenlaw was just massive. So they need to find his replacement, and they need to do so quick. And I think Winters and Martin give them 2 really good options. It's just a matter of which one of those guys wins out in camp. But a battle I'm watching closely for sure.
Okay. The other need, you said that you thought that they might take a look at this deep tight end class and look for a future number 1.
Boy,
they did not.
No, not even a little bit.
No, they added a couple of journeyman tight ends.
Yeah.
Which really, you take a look at this entire unit, tight end unit, and it's very underwhelming once you get past Kittle.
Yeah, man. I'm so intrigued to know what, like, are they high on Braden Willis still? A 7th-round pick from a couple years ago who hasn't played much. Jake Tunges, who I think they signed as a free agent out of like Denver or something. He had a couple of nice moments in the preseason. Is he a player that they're banking on? Luke Farrell, their unrestricted free agent signing from Jacksonville, is a really interesting player for me. Not a super productive player. I think 36 catches and 318 yards, I think, are his numbers as a pro.
Sounds like it.
Across 4 years at Jacksonville. But John Lynch mentioned, again, this is on the 49ers Talk podcast with Matt Mayoko, he mentioned that they're hoping Luke Farrell can take some of the blocking onus off of George Kittle. And I thought that was really interesting because the 49ers don't run a ton of multiple tight end personnel. I was actually running the numbers last night. Out of 1,026 snaps last year, they ran 140 snaps with multiple tight end personnel.
Wow. Okay.
But John Lynch mentioned that Luke Farrell was brought in part to stay in as a pass blocker, which would allow George Kittle to get out in a route because George Kittle, I'm writing about this at NinersWire.com. This is why I have these numbers off the top of my head. I don't just remember these things. George Kittle had a pass block rate of 11.6%. So on 11.6% of his passing snaps, he was in blocking last year. It was his highest rate since 2021. The previous 2 years, he was like 7% and 7 point something percent. He was below 8% in the last 2 years, and then it jumped to 11.6%. So I think they want him pass blocking way less, and so Luke Farrell is a more than adequate blocker. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see more 22 and 12 personnel from the 49ers this year in hopes of getting George Kittle out in more passing routes where he doesn't have to stay in and block so often. Which is a pretty good solution for a receiving core that's dealing with an injury to Brandon Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall's already dealing with a hamstring thing. Jacob Cowing's a huge question mark. The rookie Jordan Watkins is obviously a huge question mark. So I think the more you can get George Kittle involved in the passing game, the better. And that's what I think Luke Farrell is going to do. So that might wind up being a pretty significant offseason addition for the Niners, even if he doesn't put up a ton of production.
And still in saying that, very surprising with as deep as this tight end class was that they and 11 draft picks, that they weren't able to find just one that they felt could be someone that they could develop and so forth. But hey, they know what they're doing.
Hey, maybe next year,
Maybe next year. Okay. And then the last one was safety with Hufanga gone. And sure enough, they took care of that quite a bit. Matter of fact, added Richie Grant and Jason Pinnock in free agency. They also added Sigel in round 5. How's Mustafa?
So Mustafa's dealing with an ACL injury that he suffered in the final week last year. It was not, this is according to Nick Wagner from ESPN, it was not an ACL tear, but damage to a previously repaired torn ACL.
Okay.
It was like a damage to the repair. So it doesn't sound like he's going to be out for the season or anything. Wagner said something about mid-season. Mustafa responded on Twitter and made it sound like maybe it would be earlier than that, but we know players always do that. But I think Mustafa's a good player. Jair Brown is where things get interesting. He did not acquit himself well last year as a starter. And it wouldn't shock me at all if the 49ers are looking for a little bit more athleticism there alongside Malik Mustafa. Like Malik Mustafa is going to be that big hitter, that hammer. He has been awesome at that he was awesome at that in his first season. Jair Brown is just kind of out there. And I'm not totally sure that he's the best starting safety on the roster, like as a free safety. Okay. That's where I have two things on this. Jason Pinnock, I have no thoughts. Marquise Siegel and Richie Grant are really interesting, though. So Siegel is a rookie from Kansas State. Insane athleticism. Like, the athletic testing numbers are just off the charts. So when you watch him play, there's just a handful of times per game where you're like, wow. Like, he just really jumps off the screen with the way he moves. I think he's a special mover. Now, again, can he play? TBD. But I think they wanted to add some athleticism next to the thump that Mustafa provides. And that's where Richie Grant gets really interesting for me. Because if you're a 49er fan, you'll remember. If you're not, brief history lesson, Jimmy Ward was drafted by the 49ers in 2015? Okay. 2014? A long time ago. And he moved all over the place. He was playing slot corner. He played outside corner. He was a natural free safety. He played some free safety. Well, under Robert Saleh, he really kind of found a home as a free safety who kind of roamed and did a little bit of everything. Could come down and cover in the slot. He'd cover outside sometimes, but he was primarily this kind of do everything Swiss Army knife free safety. I think the 49ers signed Richie Grant because he played a little bit of everywhere with Atlanta. And it wouldn't shock me at all. Well, it wouldn't shock me if he just didn't make the team, but it also wouldn't shock me at all if he winds up assuming under Saleh that he can kind of gain his footing and play all these different spots in their defense at a high enough level. It wouldn't shock me at all if he winds up grabbing that starting job as a kind of facsimile of Jimmy Ward, who on any given snap could line up anywhere on defense. And if Richie Grant can cover at least a little bit out of the slot, I think that gives the 49ers a huge advantage in some of what they can do with the rest of their secondary. So I think Richie Grant's going to get opportunities to start for that reason. I think Marquise Siegel is going to get a ton of opportunities to start just because his athleticism is so special. Jair Brown probably starts week 1 because I don't think Malik Mustafa will be ready to start week 1. But I would expect it to be over the long haul this season. I would expect it to be Mustafa and then one of Siegel or Grant, barring a significant turnaround from Jair Brown.
Yeah, because Pennock's got the relationship with Saleh. He was, matter of fact, as a Jet fan, I remember he was, I think, a UDFA. No, he might have been a draft pick, later round draft pick. And I remember and we were quite surprised that they weren't able to fit him in somewhere, but it was a deep, loaded secondary, and they were trying him at a different position. And he actually started to play well for the Giants when they let him go. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually wound up playing a little bit more, especially early on, knowing Saleh's system, even though we haven't played with him for a year, but knowing him a little bit more. But hey, bottom line is if Mustafa's out, like you said, for at least half the season, they're going to need one of these guys to step up. At least one of them, or two, depending on if Brown doesn't play any better than he did last year. So
Yep.
All right, let's stay in the secondary. So is there a big camp battle we have there with Stout and Trey Brown at nickel?
Yeah. That's kind of my assumption. Because I think Renardo Green's got a starting job locked down. I think the same for Deommodore Lenoir. The interesting thing with Trey Brown is I think he could play outside primarily, which would allow one of Renardo Green or Deommodore Lenoir to kick inside. Upton Stout might be too small to play outside. He is very, very small, which, that doesn't prohibit you from playing outside. But I think if he winds up being their best third cornerback, I think it takes away a little bit of the versatility between Green and Lenoir, where they can move inside or outside, because I think Stout would be primarily a slot corner. So that's certainly a battle I'll be keeping an eye on, though, because Stout, he's another guy who, again, is small, but just flat out moves, like flies to the ball. Like some of his tape just doesn't make sense, like how quick he is. So I think he's got a real chance to start, but if he starts, it'll be in the slot with Renardo Green and Deommodore Lenoir playing outside. If Trey Brown wins that job, I would expect him and one of Lenoir or Green to be outside with the other one kicking into the slot.
Okay. Let's see. What's now? I know we didn't get much on the top two picks, but bottom line is edge rusher, getting some more pass rushing. That's definitely a big deal for the 49ers that their defense is going to take it up a notch. Have you heard anything so far from either, especially Mykel Williams? Were you surprised at all when he was the pick, or was he definitely one of the guys that you heard all along, or at least in the last few days heading to the draft, that they were targeting?
Yeah, that was the pretty strong indication going into draft night, and in the couple of weeks leading up to draft night was Mykel Williams was certainly up there, along with the Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan. I think was a name they really liked. And then the other name that kept getting floated around was Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle from Texas.
Yeah.
Was the other one. And the way it shook out, the Niners actually tried trading up to number 8, I believe, with the Carolina Panthers to draft Mykel Williams. They were really worried he wasn't going to get past 9 or 10 to them at 11. So not a shock when he was available at 11 and the 49ers went that route. I think that he improves their run defense right away, and they think he has a ton of upside as a pass rusher. And if that's true, if that's the case, and if his season last year was really just hindered by that high ankle sprain that he played through, the 49ers could have a really, really good defensive line with Williams and Bosa, with Bryce Huff as that rotational edge rusher. And it also sounds like Mykel Williams, because of his size, is going to be able to kick inside on passing downs to rush from the interior with Bryce Huff on the side opposite Nick Bosa. So the 49ers are really, really crossing their fingers that Mykel Williams figures out how to rush the passer in the NFL, because if he doesn't, it puts them in a similar spot to where they were last year, where defenses can just load up on Nick Bosa and they have a really hard time getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, and again, I'm very familiar with Bryce Huff, and I did not want the Jets to give him that big contract that he got with Philly, because I know he didn't deserve it. Mm-hmm. He really excelled with the Jets as basically a pass rush specialist. That's really all he was. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll be the role, and I'm sure it will be. And if he fits into that role, that should really work out well. But yeah, just looking at the depth chart, that does seem like something that, I mean, they're going to need just about, we know Bosa, but they're going to need both Williams and Huff, it looks like, to produce, because even if only one of them does, I don't know where else are they getting that pass rush from. Are there any other players we see on that depth chart there, some of the holdovers that you think could give them some more pass rush?
I would love to be able to gas somebody up right now, but man, Yetur Gross-Matos is not that guy.
No.
Sam Okuwanu had moments last year, but I don't think he's a player they want to rely on. Robert Beal is going into his 3rd year out of Georgia. He has had so many opportunities to kind of take on a bigger role, more substantial role, and he just hasn't. Jonathan Garvin is a practice squad guy to me. Same with Taron Johnson and I guess I did Sam Okuwanu already. But yeah, so that's just kind of where the rest of that defensive end group is at. I'm not super confident in them, and that's why I think there's so much pressure on Mykel Williams.
That's right.
And Bryce Huff.
Any chance that they could, I don't know what their cap is, but that, because there are a few veterans that will be adding on to teams at some point, training camp, once the hard part's over, you know how it is for these veterans. So there are a few of those guys that are out there. Any chance that the Niners are one of those teams that could add a pass rusher veteran late in camp?
Yeah, definitely. They're fine. Their salary cap situation this year is fine. They could certainly fit in a Von Miller or a Zadarius Smith, or I forget. I think those guys are still unsigned.
Yes,
but
I think Zadarius Smith is going to Detroit, but yeah,
it feels like he'd go back, right?
Yeah,
I guess
it does.
But it wouldn't shock me at all if they wind up going that route.
Okay.
But I also, if I'm betting on it, I don't think they're going to sign anyone else. I think they're going to try and roll in with this group and give this group as many opportunities as possible to be good.
And of course, you still have the trade deadline, so anything is possible when you're got championship aspirations. Okay, offensively, and just taking a look at there's absolutely no movement with the starters. Matter of fact, even when you look at some of the backups that were signed, and we talked about Farrell and Dillard, we know they're not really going to be major contributors. You do have Demarcus Robinson, who was a free agent receiver. They drafted Watkins. You talked about him. So really, I mean, of course, Mac Jones is now trying to fight for that veteran backup job. But offensively, I mean, it just looks like Jordan Watkins is like maybe Jordan James, the 5th round running back. Anything's possible there in round 5 with a running back. But it looks like it's just they've left it up to the couple of rookies. Other than that, this offense is just coming back with the same group primarily, and Demarcus Robinson too, coming back with the same group minus a few players that have gone elsewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. They didn't lose a ton offensively. I know a lot was made about Aaron Banks, their starting left guard, signing with Green Bay, but Aaron Banks is a good player. He's not a $20 million a year player.
No.
Like that was a wild contract he got. I know he'd get priced out of what the 49ers wanted to spend at left guard, but that was wild. Salute to Aaron Banks. Get paid, man.
Hey.
But yeah, I think they spent a first round pick on Ricky Pearsall last year. The expectation is Ricky Pearsall is going to step up. Jawan Jennings going into a contract year fell 25 yards shy of 1,000. He would have gotten there had he not gotten ejected in the first half of the season finale against the Cardinals. I think Isaac Arendo and Christian McCaffrey is a good 1-2 punch in the backfield as long as they both stay healthy. So yeah, I think, and then Jacob Cowing, their fourth round pick from last year, is a significant question mark, but I think a player they want to give opportunities to. So yeah, I don't think they needed to make any major overhauls offensively. As much as they fought uphill at times on that side of the ball last year, they were still, I think, 9th in offensive DVOA or something like that. Like they weren't a terrible offense. So I think they're hoping that they can get healthy, get Christian McCaffrey right, get Brandon Ayuk back at some point during the regular season and try and make a run.
What have you heard? Because Mac Jones, you would think he's got the lead for that role. He's a veteran. Is that a lock? Is he definitely the backup? And Curtis Work is a very interesting player because, people, especially before you get into the whole draft process, you see the numbers, and even though he played very well in the MAC, he goes over to Indiana and he's quarterback of an undefeated team in the Big Ten. And I started to hear a lot of noise from fans that I knew they were getting a little carried away with the kid. But that's the difference between, crazy fans and the scouting process. Yeah. But still, there's a lot to like about him as a potential down the road backup quarterback in the NFL. Have you heard anything so far, whether it's about Rourke or Jordan James or any of these including Watkins, any of these mid to late round draft picks so far?
Jordan Watkins kind of stood out at minicamp, at mandatory minicamp, and during OTAs. He can move a little bit, but again, I take minicamp and OTA stuff with a couple grains of salt and a shot of tequila, right? Like it's there. When I was covering the Titans, there was a guy, Kalfani Muhammad, who's a running back out of Cal, who just tore it up at OTAs and mandatory minicamp. He was really good, and then the pads came on, and he disappeared.
Yeah.
So I take all that with a grain of salt. I haven't heard really anything about Jordan James. Curtis Rourke is interesting because he's dealing with that ACL still, and he's recovering from the ACL. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the 49ers try and redshirt him this year.
Okay.
Where he just goes on IR and spends the season rehabbing. He would still get to be in meetings. He'd still get to be around the team. Yep. And then the hope would be that once he's healthy, he could kind of hit the ground running and be an inexpensive long-term backup for Brock Purdy. I think that's kind of the goal with him. There's some stuff to like about him with NFL arm, and he's played a lot of football, won a lot of games at Indiana last year, but I don't. It's not like he's going to be the next Brock Purdy. I don't think.
No,
but I think
they don't come around very often. No.
Yeah.
I know fans like to make that comparison, and it's so easy to do, but it ain't that easy. So
no.
It's but hey, you get a long-term solid backup. That's good. That's you need those in the NFL. We definitely know that. Okay, so before I let you go, what would you say right now? Give me. Because I would have asked you this question anyway, and we went over a couple possibilities. Give me like your best camp battles to look forward to.
Yeah, that will linebacker spot is one I'm checking out for sure. We'll start on defense here. The will linebacker spot, and then that third cornerback spot. Those are two really key positions where the 49ers, to me, don't even have a front runner to start. It is, I think, going to be wide open. So those are the two I'm watching on the defensive side. There's some stuff they got to figure out on the interior of the defensive line too, but I'm watching that less closely. They have a lot of bodies there that are going to get some burn, and I think that's going to be a pretty heavy rotation. Offensively, man, maybe the starting left guard job between Spencer Burford and Ben Barch. The starting receiver spot, the third receiver spot with Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, and then who else is it going to be as their third receiver to open the year if Brandon Ayuk's not ready, which it doesn't sound like he's going to be. Is that Jordan Watkins? Is it the veteran Demarcus Robinson? That's who my money would be on. Isaiah Nair is an undrafted rookie out of Nebraska who can really move, and he has a ton of size that the 49ers just don't really have in their receiving core. He's a player to watch. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a factor come training camp, but I'll have an eye on him just to kind of see if he can translate that size and speed into any kind of NFL success. But yeah, that's really what I'm watching for offensively. There's not a ton of starting jobs up for grabs.
Yeah, Nair's a guy that he doesn't make. He doesn't stick to his decisions very often. He's gone. I think he's been with 3 teams in college, and he's also. I remember trying to follow whether or not he was going to stay another year or enter the draft, and he must have changed his mind like 8 times in about a month. So that's just an interesting player, because I remember him at Wyoming, and you just felt, hey, this kid's got something, but it was Wyoming, and Josh Allen wasn't there. So you just felt, well, he goes somewhere else and maybe he could do something. And he did show a little bit in Nebraska, but yeah, he's had some injuries and a lot of different schools. So yeah, maybe this is a player, finds a home, NFL coaching, all that. I agree. I think he actually might be the top UDFA to keep an eye on, because there's not a lot. I mean, there's only like 5 or 6 of them I think the Niners have here.
I think it's 9 total.
Oh, that's right. Let's see.
7?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
At least somebody here knows.
Well, it's the depth chart at our lands. I better know. But anyway, special temes, everything looking okay. Do we really have a battle, by the way, between Greg Joseph, speaking of camp battles, and Jake Moody?
I think Jake Moody, I don't think it's a battle as much as it is if the wheels if the wheels really fall off with Jake Moody, they have a veteran Greg Joseph who they know can handle himself in an NFL game. But I'm expecting Jake Moody to be fine in training camp in the preseason. But man, I think it is going to be a very, very short leash for him.
And are there any injuries? Because you've touched on a couple, of course. We mentioned Mustafa and Ayuk. So what's the prognosis on Ayuk? And is there anyone else outside of those two that who may not start the season?
Ayuk is a huge question. I have no idea. I wish I had something to tell you on that front. I'm not even going to say mid-season or week 4 or week 10. I don't. We've gotten nothing. So does that
mean he's definitely not starting week 1?
I would be shocked if he starts week 1. Like, he tore his ACL with additional damage in his knee in week 7. So week 1 feels like a little bit of a stretch. To me, this year is more about getting him healthy and back on the field. Because even once he does play, he's not going to be at 100%, right?
True.
It's always the year after with ACLs. So I think if they get Brandon Ayuk back for any amount of time and get any level of production from him this year, I think that's a pretty significant win.
Okay, and that is going to wrap it up. So when we talk again, Kyle, in a couple of months, I guess you can say it'll be for real. But it seems like this is going to be maybe the most interesting camp that you're going to have covered over the last few years, with all these different possibilities and questions, even though a lot of it's on defense, but still there are a couple of, key injuries and things of that nature. I mean, you're number 1 receiver. So would I be correct in making that statement that this particular training camp could possibly give you more stories than you've seen the last few years?
A bigger diversity of stories for sure. There have been open starting spots in the past, but it feels like there are so much of the 49ers future hinges on whether a bunch of these guys are good at football or not. So I think there's going to be a microscope on every second year player, every rookie. You've got the Brandon Ayuk stuff. The reason I hesitated is because the Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, like all that, there was so much going on with the quarterback stuff for a while, that there was an Aaron Rodgers thing. There was a Tom Brady thing. Like, So the quarterback stuff is always going to have the most intrigue, but no real intrigue there this offseason. But a giant diversity of stories to be watching, because the 49ers are at an inflection point in their franchise's history, I think, going into this year.
Yeah, there seems like a lot more questions on the depth chart than I've seen in quite a bit. So definitely should be a very interesting training camp and preseason. Want to remind everybody too that Arlez has their draft review guide out in just a couple of weeks. So we'll have a link in the description of how you can order the draft review guide. We'll also have links in the description of how you can follow Kyle on social media, as well as not only on Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube, but also you've got the Insiders Sacramento radio show that you do 5 days a week. So a lot of Sacramento Kings talk, I would assume.
If you need Kings takes, come find us.
That's the station. That's the show. All right, Kyle. Excellent. Great job as always. I appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you again in a couple of months.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you.
You got it.